This is the Bigger Pockets Podcast, show 353.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everyone? It's Brandon Turner, host of the Bigger Pockets Podcast, here with my co-host, Mr. David Green. David Green, welcome to the show again, buddy. What's up?
What's up, amigo? I had a really good weekend. I actually was the keynote speaker at a real estate conference in San Ramon.
Look at you.
Then I went to my brother-in-law's wedding, and I have 2 flips that we put under contract today with my partner. So those should both be pretty good in the Bay Area.
Wow.
So I'm on a roll.
You're on a roll. That's awesome, dude. Congrats. I got a triplex under contract last week, but I'll tell more about that later in the story and how that's going to get me a Tesla, which is kind of cool. I tell that story on today's interview with our guest, Tim Rhode. So Tim Rhode was on the show back on episode, I don't remember, but it was one that we did like I don't know. We'll see if Kevin can't find the message. Kevin's our producer. He's awesome. But back when we did that group interview with like Josh and David Osborne, Tim, Pat Hyben, yeah, and you and me on stage. We did a live show. Anyway, Tim was one of those. He was a get the goods in the woods guy, if you remember back then. But Tim has an amazing story, and Tim was actually one of your mentors early on, as David tells the story today on the show as well about how he got you into real estate. So Tim is also an amazing real estate agent, a real estate investor, and was able to retire from his real estate at 40 because of how awesome he did at it, and then continued to do some more real estate investing. And he tells a ton of great stories today, especially my favorite thing is when he tells a story of how he went from $5,000 in cash to making $5,000 a month in cash flow. That story was just fantastic. And we cover a lot of like intricate parts of that, but that perfectly apply to everybody listening today. If you're into financial freedom, you're going to love it. So without further ado, well, with some more ado, let's get to today's quick tip. I don't know why that's so funny. Today's quick tip. We got a new thing launched at BiggerPockets, and it's really expensive. It's FREE. It's free. It's called the Fire Starter. And here's the idea behind the Fire Starter. It is I guess you could call it like a goal tracker, action-taking tracker, whatever. It's called the Fire Starter. It's a tool to help you reach your goals. So if you want to become financially free, it's the perfect way to track your progress and hold yourself accountable. So it's going to help you reach your big goals, like your 90-day goals, if you're using the 90 Days of Intention Journal or the Intention Journal, help you set up daily habits so you can track your habits that you're doing regularly. So it's free. You're going to love it. Just go to BiggerPockets.com, log into your account, and it's right there on your dashboard. So if you go to your dashboard on BiggerPockets, you're going to find it under that section that says My Goals. So check it out. Again, quick tip is the Fire Starter. And there'll also be a little bit more information of it on the show notes for today's show at BiggerPockets.com/show 353. In case you have any questions, we'll put a little bit more information there. All right. Well, let's get to
No more ado.
It's time for today's interview with Tim Rhode. Let's get to it. All right, Tim, welcome to the Bigger Pockets Podcast, man. Good to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I am so looking forward to this. 2 good friends talking real estate. What can be better?
What can be better? Well, the last time we had you on the show, it was part of a group. It was back when we did the episode we recorded live, and you were on a panel of different individuals along with David Osborne, Pat Hyben, and Josh Dorkin was there, me and David, and I'm probably forgetting somebody else, but it was awesome. But people want to know more about you. You were the only one of that group that had not yet been on this show, and you're like a legit real estate guy. And so I know I'm excited to dig into your story a little bit because I know a lot about your skiing and your goods in the woods and your charity work, but I want to know more about your real estate. So let's start at the very beginning. How did you even get into this world of real estate investing?
Well, it started because when I was a kid, I loved Monopoly. I loved you know how some of us are born with that entrepreneurial spirit and just kind of see the whole world different. So I guess it started at a very young age, but I got off to a rough start, barely graduated high school, never went to college, and at 25, I'm a part-time grocery clerk painting addresses on people's curbs to buy diapers for my 2 small kids. Then I started listing and selling real estate and was investing I guess I started investing back when I was a grocery clerk before I started listing and selling. So at a tender young age, I was buying properties.
So why real estate at like a young age? Like what got you into that? Like, did you have family into it or anything like that?
Yeah, my mom listed and sold, and she took me to a Wayne Dyer event and a Tom Hopkins event. These are old, like Zig Ziglar and stuff. Yeah. This was back in the 70s. So, I started going to events like that and learning just the things that you could do to earn a good living and invest wisely to get somewhere with your life. So I think I really like that whole, if it is to be, it's up to me concept of how to do things after being a union grocery clerk. So,
we haven't mentioned this yet, but Tim here is actually the very first person that got me introduced to real estate. Like, I literally would not be on this podcast. I would not have investment properties. I would not be an agent if it wasn't for Tim Rhode, who reached out to me while I was working at a restaurant and said, "Hey, I heard that you're really good and you've got some talent. Do you want to come prospect for me?" And I said yes, because I knew that Tim Rhode was the guy from all the commercials that played. Like, he used to have this commercial as a real estate agent, which is what he got into after being a grocery clerk, that they would sing, "Call Tim Rhode and start packing." And so I didn't know what a prospector was. I just know, like, when Tim Rhode says, "Do you want to do this? You better say yes." And that is literally how I got my first experience with cold calling, with understanding real estate. Tim would have me running around and looking at pre-foreclosures and talking to people, knocking on doors, having difficult conversations with someone who's been like hounded by creditors and trying to buy their house so we could flip it before the bank took it. It was my first exposure before BiggerPockets, before anything. And then Tim really stayed in touch with me over the years and just encouraged me to keep my rentals. There really was nobody else that I had to keep me in this game. And Tim was the guy that basically had me in it. And then he got me into GoBundance, and, things kind of took off from there. So Tim's one of the people that I look at, like my first and my biggest mentor that I ever had, the most influential person. And I'm really curious, Tim, if you can share how you went from a high energy grocery clerk that was just like blowing through a very low paying job into taking that same energy and applying it into real estate sales, where you made all the money that you then invested.
Yeah, that's a really good question, David, because, a lot of us find ourselves, we know that it doesn't fit where we are. It's like we haven't put the key in and turned that lock. And so here I am, a grocery clerk and a very personable person who cares about people, who likes coming through, and the job didn't fit. So I get into real estate, and the first weekend I'm in real estate, I hold an open house, I sell it. And those people need to list a home. That's awesome. And then I take some buyers out and I sell them a home. And it's like, oh my goodness, it is on. I found, so I'm trying to just calm down, because I just made more that weekend than I did in the last 6 months as a grocery clerk. So then my mind just starts, the wheels are turning. And in high school, I never paid attention because I couldn't understand the periodic tables. I didn't understand algebra and trigonometry, but I learned basic English, basic math, the things, just the basics of everything, I guess. And then looked at what did the grocery business do right. They delivered sunshine service. That was their motto. So when I sold real estate, I was going to work harder than everybody else. I was going to learn everything I could do about the business. And so I just concentrated on coming through for people. And then very early on, back before anybody had teams, I got an assistant. I paid Diane McClanahan $48,000 a year and 4 weeks paid vacation my second year in the business to manage my escrows and basically manage the team so I could go out and do what I did best, talk to a lot of people and list homes right. And my income went from, and by the way, I was making 60 grand when I promised her 48. And my income went to like 170 the next year, and I never looked back. And just always had people around me doing all the things I suck at, so I could get out and meet with people, come through, and then also go out and look for properties for myself.
That's cool. Yeah, like that concept of always trying to find other people to do the things you suck at is one of those, like, it seems so obvious to people who are successful, like, because I feel like but when you're starting out, like, that's not obvious. Like, you don't know that. Like, I always learned growing up, like, work on your weaknesses. Like, if you're not good at batting, bat more. Like, you spend hours at the dugout batting or whatever. I don't know the phrase, because I quit baseball eventually. But like, when I look at successful people, they're not out there going, well, I'm not very good at this, so I better get better at it. Better go take a class on accounting so I can become a better accountant for myself. Instead, they're like, how do I do this? In fact, I heard once an interview with a billionaire, and the billionaire had mentioned, I guess I heard somebody who told me the story of a billionaire who said that their number one skill in life is being a quitter. Everything they do in life, they just try to quit because they say, I want somebody else to do it who's better than I can. So I'll build something, and then I want to quit that position as soon as possible so somebody else can come and do it better. Then I can move on to the next thing. I thought that was such a cool kind of way of looking at that.
Yeah, it's a brilliant concept. And Jeff Hoffman's book, Scale, talks about you master something and then you find somebody under you. And hopefully at some point the business becomes large enough where that somebody over you is supervising that and you're on to the next business. And that's David Osborne 101, by the way.
Yeah, that really is. So, all right, so let's talk about your real estate investing. So you're making good money as an agent, and there's a lot of people listening to the show right now that are making good money as an agent or as a dentist or as a doctor or as a, dock worker, whatever. They're making decent income. How did you translate that income into real estate investing? Like, were you buying rentals? Were you flipping houses? What were you doing there in the beginning?
Yeah, I was really aggressive. I like to use the word risk tolerance level, and it's good to know your own. My 36-year-old son has a very low risk tolerance level, and I begged him and got him into a few investments of Andrew Cushman's, which have worked out really good for him. He's very happy. I had an extremely high risk tolerance level. I'd go out and find properties I had no money to buy and write long escrows, and then just tell myself, all right, you got to make an extra $25,000 in the next 4 months, and then just bust it and sell a few extra homes and make an extra $18,400 and put, $4,600 on a credit card and eat mac and cheese and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for 3 months. Oh, darn, the roof's out, and get just hustle, get back to par and then go do it again. And I just never had any savings or any, it was just for a probably 15-year period, just always betting on my ability to earn and our ability to tighten our belts if we needed to, but just kind of had the hammer down, and I never knew why. It just felt it was just a fun game.
One thing you just mentioned, Tim, was what you call playing defense, that you live beneath your means. Can you share a little bit about what your mindset was once the money started rolling in from real estate sales? I mean, we kind of skipped over that, but you were just the man in Manteca. You were, to this day, people talk about you like Babe Ruth. There will never be another Tim Rhode. How many houses you sold. I'm pretty sure you were selling houses and you didn't even know it was your listing. You were just like fanatical about that. Like if somebody had said, hey, we're thinking about selling, we called Bob, you're like, stop right there. I'm coming over right now. I got the paperwork. Yeah.
Right. I've got stories. Just wait. Have you signed the contract yet?
Yeah,
I'll be right over.
So fearless.
Make sure Carol's there too, please.
Yeah. Tell us, as the money starts rolling in from that, how did you manage to stay beneath your means? What motivated you, and what was your mindset?
David, this is a huge point in all of this. This is the wealthy barber, the millionaire next door. Defense wins championships. And what I did that few others did, and I call them the One Life ABCs, my income went up drastically from grocery clerk to successful agent to very successful agent. I played ironclad defense. I drove the same car for 10 years, for like 3 decades in a row. I've never worn bling or cared about what anybody thought. And I never bought listings. I never spent a ton on, we spent good money on marketing. I shouldn't say that. But I just didn't I didn't care what anyone else thought, what Madison Avenue thought. And while my income went from 30 to 60 to 170 to 325 to 400, I never made a ton of money. My expenses went from 20 to 25 to 30 to 35 to 40 to maybe 60. So we have a huge gap in left to invest. And I just invested wisely in what I knew best, local real estate, from 1985 to 2005, when I sold into our Cali craze and cashed out at a pretty darn good time.
That's awesome. So how you were buying single family houses or rental? I mean, multifamily. What were you buying?
I started off with single families, and I bought first thing I bought was a triple wide mobile home while I was a grocery clerk, and it was a bank repo. It was worth like 40 grand. I picked it up for 20. I needed 10 grand down. I had 5. I borrowed 5 from Merv King, the grocery manager, and I kept that for a rental when I bought my first single family, still as a grocery clerk, come to think of it. And then right when I got into real estate, we moved 2 blocks away, and I kept that one for a rental. So then I started buying anything I could get my hands on. Single family, duplexes. I did really well with a few properties with land in the path of growth. And one story I like to tell is how I turned $5,000 into $5,000 a month over 2 real estate deals.
Well, please tell that.
Yeah. So at this point, I'm a real estate broker, which is a really good gig to be. And they say realtors find the best deals. Well, you're right. You're in the trenches and you have your eyes wide open. So I had a really good name for myself, and people would call me up, and I had very good trust in the community. And so I'd come to their house and I'd say, I could wear 2 hats. I could either list your home and get you top dollar, or I could just buy it and make it a very easy deal. But once I list your home, I can never buy it because I have a fiduciary duty at that point. So I had this couple say, all we need is like $5 grand, and we can go buy this new home, and we just take over our home subject to. So I did. I paid them $5 grand. I took over their home. I put a tenant in there. I kept it for a year. This was right, and they did wonderful, because it was right at a time when our market was starting to take off, and they bought a new home that went up drastically for them. So it was great for them. So I bought it, and a year later, I exchanged it into a piece of land in the path of growth that had been on the market for probably 8 years, on a busy street called Louise Avenue, right near I-5, which runs from Mexico to Canada. And there was a Hampton Inn coming in right next to it, and a strip center coming in on the other side of it. And I knew this from following what's going on in my city and knowing the real estate and stuff. So its time was right, and I went and bought it from the owner. I paid them the $120,000 down that property had appreciated over the last year and a half, believe it or not, because we were in that kind of how can I put it, just hitting hot market. And the land in the path of growth wasn't worth it. Hampton Inn's coming in, strip centers coming in, boom, it's worth way, way more. So I take that 120, I buy that piece of land. I sold the piece of land 3 years later that had a whole piece of crap house on it that I had a tenant in it that covered the payment. And then I sold it 3 years later for $1,080,000, and I'd bought it for $360,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So
What year was this at, Tim?
this was between like 2001 to 2004. Just think of that time in Manteca.
It was like 15 years ago, $1 million. That was a little bit more than it is now.
Yeah. So actually that piece they never did anything with that piece of land. It's still sitting there. It's fascinating.
Really?
They missed their time, yeah. So and they tried to, and this good piece of the story, they wanted to back out, And when I first went into escrow with them, they wanted a long escrow. I said, fine, just go hard with $100,000 non-refundable deposit after 30 days, and I'll give you like a 8-month escrow or whatever they wanted, because they wanted to do their due diligence. And in doing their due diligence, I think they found out a couple more restaurants or hotels were coming in, and they decided not to do it. And they tried to back out, and we're going to lose their $100,000, and went through with the deal. And I'm so glad I said large deposit, non-refundable. Anyway, So I exchanged that property into a building leased to AutoZone in Knoxville, Tennessee, that counting my payment, my mortgage pay down every month is $5,000 a month. And so I took the $5,000, bought the property in the path of growth, and exchanged it into the very easy, all I get is 12 paychecks, we paid your taxes, we paid your insurance, and a 1099 per year from them. All tax-free because of depreciation. Boom! Is this a great country or what?
I love that story for a couple of things. I want to illustrate a few points in here for people who maybe didn't understand a couple of concepts. A couple of things. First of all, subject to. So you said you bought that very first property, $5,000 down, subject to their existing mortgage. Can you explain what that means? That
means I basically just started writing checks and took over their loan.
Yep.
And just got their address of just got their payment stickers of where they're making their checks. And it started coming from T&T Enterprises instead of Joe and Betty Martin. So subject to is it used to be a lot more popular than I feel like it is today. I don't know why that is, but it seems to have kind of like not as popular, but it was super, and it still works. I hear people still doing it today. There are some risks, of course, with it. So if people are going to go do it, make sure you look those up. Like the bank might freak out and not like that. But there's ways around it. There's things you can do. There's reasons that people still do it today. So anyway, subject to investing, very cool. And then you went and bought land. Now land doesn't cash flow. I mean, like unless you're renting it, right? But like land, so you bought that almost as a speculation, right? Like was that worrisome to you, or you just knew like this is going to sell for a lot more later? I'm getting a great deal. Yeah. The really great concept, Brandon. That was one of 2 deals like this I did. David Green, I don't know if you remember a piece of property I owned out on Airport with Dick Prada. It was 3.5 acres out near the hospital out there where the golf course, west of town. And that was another deal like this where I bought that in the 90s, just waited for the path of growth to come my way. And I bought it for $115,000 and sold it 12 years later for 1.2.
Wow.
Yeah. So these were just, long-term plays, just knowing your area. And guys, there's times in the cycle, and, there's times to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And I'd really like to talk about cycles because that's played such a huge part in my career was, here I am, a very successful person, but we're talking decades, and it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is you were continuing to generate income working. You didn't say, I got some investment property, I'm just going to quit, and I'm going to go relax on the beach. You kept grinding. You kept mastering your craft. You excelled in selling homes. You built a team. You had an assistant. And then rather than putting pressure on yourself to just invest all that money in anything, you strategically picked the stuff that you felt were your home runs, and you held them until it made sense to sell it, and then you were always trading up. That's another principle I'm picking out of this, is you took your money and you put it into another good deal. You didn't have to do 20, 30 deals a year. You could do one deal a year maybe, and then 8, 9 years later, it's gone up in value, so you sell it, you trade into something, and you just started with this snowball with every single move just got bigger and bigger and bigger till you had a really big snowball. If that's pretty accurate to how it happened, tell me what your mindset was when it came to knowing when to hold them and when to fold them.
Yeah, there was a lot of different things going on because into all of this, we're down in Manteca in the valley, and Tina and I had a dream since we met each other in 1990 that someday I'm looking out at you guys. It snowed last night, and there's these snow-covered hills, and the water's coming off my roof, and the trees are changing, and it's just this magnificent view. And someday I knew I'd be sitting here having this conversation. And I'm down there in Manteca just working my game and sharpening my saw. Just like, that's why Tribe of Millionaires is so important, because I was sharpening my saw. If you guys know who Tom Ferry is, I was in a mastermind with Tom back when his goal was to get his first credit card. So I was doing this stuff back in the late 80s and 90s, way back when. Same kind of thing, learning from people outside of my area. Best practices for what I'm doing. Best practices for life, for living a full life. Best practices for taking the money I'm making and make it work for me so I freaking get somewhere, So just my mindset was just constantly learning and honing. And then a very important piece of all this is, are you in what I call the one life fulfillment triangle, where your passions meet your talents, where there's opportunity? And let's talk David Green as a cop and Tim Rhode in the grocery business. No, we're not. Okay? And Brother James selling Cutco knives. He loves selling Cutco, but he's a musician motivator. That's our fulfillment triangle. Look at Greenie now. He's thriving. And I've been thriving in these different incarnations, one after another, for the last 20 years, because I've had the luxury of becoming financially free young. So my point is, if you're not in that fulfillment triangle where your passions meet your talents, where there's opportunity in the marketplace, if you're not currently in that, do what David Green did. Do what I did when I was a grocery clerk. Effing fix it. Find a way to fix it.
So the fulfillment triangle, passion meets talent meets opportunity. Can you explain a little bit, there's passion, but a lot of people out there are saying, well, yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about a lot of things. How does somebody find that passion and then actually get good at it? I guess I want to just kind of dive into this because I love this idea of the fulfillment triangle. So how does somebody find that passion?
You go inside and you do the tough inner work to figure out, who in the heck am I at my core? What do I like and what don't I like? David's more of an introvert. I'm more of an extrovert. David's numbers and details and stuff like that. I delegate all of that. So it's knowing who you are and what you like. Yeah. And then where will I fit? What could I wake up every single day thinking, and they pay me to do this? And by the way, there's also patience. There was a time when I still was listing and selling real estate, and I wanted to be up here getting the goods in the woods and starting the next phase of my life. And I had to remain where I was because my daughter was a junior in high school, and I owed it to my family. You know what I mean? So there's times when it's you're still holding them, not folding them. It's not time to sell the wine yet, and you need to just knuckle down and fight through a tough period. But while you're doing that, you're juggling the next incarnation and making that happen. And that's the hard part. And that's the working extra.
Yeah, that's something we don't talk about enough in real estate because it's not a very sexy term, that's patience. Like the fact that, you've been doing this for a long time and you have an amazing life today and you have got amazing charity that you work with and you have all these great stories, but they came from decades of hard work. And you mentioned, especially that deal that perfectly illustrated the $5,000 to $5,000 a month. That wasn't overnight. And it probably wouldn't sell a book if you called it $5,000 to $5,000 a month over the course of 2 decades. That wouldn't be as sexy of a term. But that's the truth of what real estate oftentimes is. We buy stuff, we hold it, we exchange into bigger properties, and then we hold those for a little while.
Yeah. And I think like everything else, I have this concept of there was, when we were kids, there were these balsa wood propellers or balsa wood airplanes that have these rubber band propellers. Do you know what I'm talking about, Brandon?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you put it together, and if you wind it a few times, it goes right in front of you and falls at your feet. If you wind it more, it goes across the room 10, 15 feet. If you keep winding it and winding it and winding it and give it one more wind, it soars beautifully. And the challenge is this is like a lot of things in life. People want things handed to them, and they think it's going to be easy, and they just wind their propeller a few times and get frustrated because they don't get results, or they wind it pretty good and get decent results. And if you just dig a little deeper and wind it, whatever it is for you, wind it a few more times, you're going to find amazing results.
Yeah, it's really good. So to mention one more thing I wanted to do before we move on, you turning that 5,000 into 5,000 a month, you said that you exchanged it. I'm assuming, are you talking about like doing a 1031 exchange? Is that how that works?
Correct.
Can you explain that?
Both of those deals were a 1031 exchange.
All right, so you can explain what is that?
So, well, I did twice where I would have paid taxes on from the difference between the 5,000 and the 125,000 less sales costs on the first deal, and I would have paid the difference between the 360 purchase price and the $1,080,000 on the second deal, and those would have been hundreds of thousands in taxes I would have paid, and I've delayed those taxes until this year. I'm finally going to sell that property 15 years later, and I'll make around $800,000 net after all is said and done. And I may just pay the tax. I may exchange it again. There's things called opportunity zones. I'll look at that opportunity when it comes, to me later this year or early next year. But a 1031 exchange is a good third level move to make once you go from small deals to big deals.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, there's a similar story that I'm in the middle of right now, but I'll tell it real quick anyway. So I bought an apartment complex for pretty much no money down back when I was 24 years old. Essentially what I did is I worked out a deal. I did a lease option for the first 6 months with the sellers so that I didn't have to have any money down. And I saved the money during those 6 months that I was making then off the property to use as a down payment. So really, I pretty much got it no money down. Then I sold that property for and I used a partner in that deal. I brought in my parents as partners. And I said, hey, if I can use your line of credit, I'll give you half someday. So I used their money to rehab it. Anyway, sold it later on for, I think, a profit of $250,000. Took that money, gave my parents their half, took my half, and 1031 that into two different properties, a mobile home park that today I make a few $1,000s a month off of, and then a property in Ohio. I just sold the property in Ohio just like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And now I'm buying a triplex here in Hawaii that's going to cash flow like $1,400 a month. That property is going to pay for my Tesla that I'm buying. So essentially, like it's the exchanging up. So now I make thousands off this mobile home park, and I make enough for a Tesla payment on this local thing. And it all came from one deal 2 trades ago in a 1031. So it's just cool. Like that's how real estate works.
Yeah, there's a lot of different games you can play with it, and that's what makes it such a fun thing to invest in. There's just it's like a kid in the candy store.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why winding that propeller is so powerful, because most people say, should I buy a house or a Tesla? But Brandon Turner says, I will buy a house, exchange it into a bigger house, turn that into a hotel, and then let my hotel pay for my Tesla. And my next Tesla after that, and then my Ferrari, and like everything else, right? Like that's the wise investor who continues to grow equity and manage their funds well will have everything that the person who can't delay gratification will have, but that well will never run dry. They will be able to keep going to it to pay and fund the life that they want to live.
Yeah. I read that in I think it was Rich Dad Poor Dad. Maybe it was Cash Flow Quadrant, one of the early Kiyosaki books, where he mentions his wife wanted some fancy, I don't know, Maserati or something that was cool back then. And she bought a rental property and it paid for it. And I remember at the moment, like that just triggered in my head, like, you can do that? Like you can buy an asset that pays for a liability. And so I've been wanting a Tesla since they came out, but I refused to buy one until I could tell the story that I bought it using rental income, because I have to do that. Like, just because of Kiyosaki. So anyway, crazy.
Are you insinuating that wasn't my original idea and that someone else had that thought first, Brandon? That sounds like blasphemy.
No, not at all. Everything's your idea. I always assume you are the origin of every good idea in the world, and then everyone else just copies you. That's what I usually.
And then you just fail to give me credit when you quote me.
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. Tim, I want to ask you something else really quickly. I know when I knew you and I was working for you, you were buying rentals and you were flipping houses. And a lot of investors get stuck in, should I flip or should I buy rentals? Tell me what your thought process was with doing both and how you made the decision on an individual property of what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, I think every property was different. We just look at the opportunity for what made the most sense for, where we were at the moment, because there was a time when we were listing, buying rentals, flipping, and then we quit listing and selling, so our income was predominantly what was already coming in as residual income and the flippers. So there was somewhere, in retrospect, I probably wish I would have kept that I flipped, 2000 to 2004, and then sold when I sold everything into the craze 2005 to 2007.
But you still use the profits from flips to fund the rentals that you ended up keeping, which you then exchange into bigger properties. They all sort of played a role in this really big, cool thing that you did. And I don't know if we mentioned it, but you retired at 40 years old.
Yeah. And when I say retired, I was flipping a home a month. So if that's working, and had rentals that I was managing, I retired from listing and selling at 40. And then so if you look at it in the 5 levels of financial freedom, I was probably at level 3, level 4, because I was still actively finding properties and stuff like that. Now I'm at level 5 and I haven't actively purchased a real estate property in 20 years.
Wow. So why don't you explain that a little bit? What are your 5 levels of financial freedom?
Level 1 is where typical American is, in debt up to their ears, have no clue what they're doing. Everybody around them's clueless, so party! Level 2 is just starting to figure this out, are aware of people doing it, maybe own their own home. Level 3 is I have a rental in place. Rental or 2, I have my retirement in place. I'm doing the things that I know I need to do to be setting up a trust and insurances and stuff like that. Level 4 is well on your way to financial freedom. You probably could turn your game board over, but you'd have to lower your lifestyle a bit maybe. And level 5 is I've been here for some time. I'm getting the goods in the woods. I choose what I do daily, and that's one life fully lived, and go abundance and my family and just fun stuff. And then level 6 I've been thinking about is when you hire somebody to manage all that for you, and you're no longer even moving money around. So you're just getting reports. Cool. Yeah. So
can you explain? You mentioned One Life. I want to talk a minute about that. What is One Life, and what do you teach in One Life?
So I talked about the One Life Fully Lived Triangle. One Life Fully Lived is a nonprofit. You can learn more about us at onelifefullylived.org. And it's where we teach people the inner core teachings of how to live your most fulfilling life possible. And I talked before about the One Life Fulfillment Triangle. And once again, that's figuring out where's your passions meet your talents, where there's opportunities for what you do in life. But it goes deeper in that. And we have core 4 teachings of a roadmap, which is vision planning. Where am I going with all this? Relationships with myself. Who's my posse? Who's my mentors? Finances. How can I master those ABCs I talked about? And wellness. How can I be healthy in my mind, body, and spirit to pull off this amazing life I've been blessed to live? So One Life just helps people at all levels of mastery dream, plan, and live their very best life possible. That's
cool. And who are you targeting primarily? Because I know you're doing schools, is that right? Or is it younger people? Is it older?
That's our challenge. is everybody deserves one life fully lived. So our business model is we help people like the BiggerPockets people who are on their way, well on their way, and at a mastery level. We help you crush your life in those 4 areas of vision, planning, relationships, finance, and wellness, so you're wealthier, healthier, happier, and get the great feeling of getting out of you and giving to help us lift those that never get this message. And that's our primary mission, is helping those on the bottom end of the totem pole. My good friend Christopher Lockhead said at a recent GoBundance event in Austin, Texas, when you get to the top of the mountain, throw down the rope. What a great way to put it. And that's what One Life's all about, is we're throwing down the rope of teaching what should be taught in school or should be taught by parents. But unfortunately, most are on level 1 or at best level 2 of that financial, and life skills knowledge level. So we want to change all of that. That's One Life.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, it's admirable because like so many people spend, I don't know, so much time thinking about how they can improve their own life and how they can improve their own finances and their own wellness. And it's great. Like, we don't talk about this a lot, but like when you get to that level 5 or living level 4, maybe a little bit earlier, but like when you're no longer consumed by how do I pay my bills, you can start thinking bigger in terms of how do I help other people figure out how to pay their bills. But most people are too consumed with their own problems in life and looking down on rich people to ever realize like maybe getting wealthier is actually the answer to helping more people.
Yeah, no, it's all a virtuous circle of the better I do and enrich my own life and live my one life fully lived. And then I spread this vibe to my family, my community, and I bring others along with me. And then when I'm becoming and I am successful, I feel we have a moral obligation to get out of ourselves, and I call it the gift. And my life's been so enhanced by all the good work we're doing with One Life. I gotta say, I'm personally, I think I've had the biggest journey of anyone I've ever met, from the most selfish person you'd ever meet in their teens to the most selfless person you'd ever meet. And I say that humbly, but I just love to touch others now, and it's such a fulfilling gift to get to this place and then learn how to give in your own way. There's no better gift. So get financially free, everyone.
There you go. I love it. All right. Well, I want to move on to the next segment of the show to go a little bit deeper into some real estate, and that is specifically through our Deal Deep Dive. All right. This is the part of the show where we dive deep into one particular deal that you've done and kind of get to know about how you did it. So let's you got a deal in mind, something that we can pick apart with a bunch of questions?
Yeah, it's 450 East Sonoma. I sent it to your producer.
Oh, wow. I got address and everything. This is great. All right. So it's in Sonoma.
No. It's in Stockton, California.
Oh, Stockton.
Beautiful Stockton, my old stomping grounds. That's where I went to college.
Nice. All right. Well, let's go through it. What was this property? Like, what kind of property was it?
It was a fixer upper.
Okay.
How did you find it?
I was out doing comps. Somebody wanted me to buy a portfolio of their properties. This is like in the early 2000s. And I was out doing comps and seeing if that was a good deal or not. And I see somebody with their back to me, and it looked like a sombrero on their head, working in front of their house. And I said, "Señor, habla inglés?" And he said, "I'm black, not Mexican." So I started off on the right foot.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. And I said, "Why are you fixing your home?" He said, "I'm selling it." And do you guys want to keep asking me questions or?
No, yeah, we will.
Yeah, we will, but I want to hear the rest of this.
Okay. So I said, "So are you?" He said, "Yeah, I'm fixing it to sell it." I said, "Do you have a buyer?" He said, "I do." I said, "Have you signed a contract?" He said, "I have not." I said, "How much are you selling it for?" He said, $55,000. I thought, holy criminy, this thing's worth more. I said, you haven't signed a contract. He said, no. And I said, I have a contract in the car. If I were to give you $5,000 more, would you sign a contract? He goes, well, the guy was kind of flaky and my wife really didn't like him. Will you pay cash? I said, I will. And I put him in the car, drove him over to his wife's, and signed the deal right there. Lots of good stuff there. Have contracts with you.
Yeah, that's great.
I love that you just went for it in that moment. I mean, there's no time to think. There's no analysis paralysis. It's, I'll give you 5,000 more. How does that sound? Okay, let me get the deal out of the car. I think we overthink things so often. And that person was just like, I was happy with 55. I'll take 60 and boom.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just a lot of good. I love that story. I'm out, looking at other deals. I see an opportunity and I ask, and I totally butcher it, which is a great part of it, which is, if you know Tim Rhode 101, of course I did that. And then I rebound and bond with the guy and get the contract signed right then. I have contracts with me. I go over to the house. I have his wife sign it right then. There's just no get the deal done.
Yeah. Well, you're not leaving any space. Like, this is something that I talk to my team about this all the time. I know I'm interrupting your deal deep dive, but I think it's important for people to hear. When we're training as police officers for how to control combative subjects, what we learn is that if you can manage the distance, you can manage the damage. So the more distance that I let that suspect get from me, the more he can wind up to punch me or throw an elbow. If you keep that person really tight and close to you, there's only so much that they can really do to hurt you. It's not much. It's like grabbing or maybe biting or something. And the same is true in sales or in real estate. If you talk to someone and they want to sell you their house and they're like, yeah, let's do it. And you say, okay, I'll be back tomorrow to sign. The minute you leave, what they start thinking is now their space is, can I call somebody else and see if they would pay more? Should I talk to my buddy and see if this is a good idea? Should I call my mom or my dad and see what they do? And by the time you come over tomorrow, they've got like 14 other pieces of input in their head that you got to start all the way over. And Tim, what you're describing is probably what made you so good at a lot of what you did, is you did not give them the space to do that. You said, you want to get this done, let's do it. And they're in a good mood and the contract is signed and everything's good. If you give people space, you can get hurt.
Yeah. Another thing is you interrupt the flow. There was just I went off my instincts a lot. And And by the way, the reason I could go off my instincts was, once again, decades of hard work and winding my propeller. And
you got a sharp saw.
This wasn't, I couldn't have done this my first year. There's no way. I didn't know those comps that well.
This is another good reason we talk a lot about specializing, especially in the beginning. Instead of trying to, obviously you've been doing this for decades, so you know a lot of different types of real estate, but when you're in the beginning, like, you get really, really good at one specific thing. So that way, when those opportunities come up, you can make those split-second decisions. Because, like, example, if you're only flipping houses in this market, you know what to buy them for, you know what to sell them for. That's not that much to learn. You could learn that in a few months. Then when those opportunities come up, you can make those split-second decisions. But if you're trying to learn everything in the world and never really get good at anything, you're just kind of a general at everything, then you can't make those decisions. And you really do have to think about them because you're just not good enough. You don't have the talent there as part of that fulfillment triangle. So just one more, I guess, thing to pull out of that. So how did you fund this deal then? You said $60,000 cash. Did you just pay then your own personal cash for it?
Yeah, by then I had, credit lines and relations built up with, right around that time when with the land and the path of growth going way up. I sold a guy's ranch and he netted $800,000 and he gave me that as a credit line at 6%. Wow. Yeah, because it was good for him. He knew me, liked me, So just built up relationships and had a lot of stuff like that. But there was one other concept I wanted to talk about that's like this is just what we're talking about here. Maybe you're really good at talking to people, but you don't have money. Maybe you're not good at either of those, but you're good at behind the scene details. And I really like finding like-minded people who are on the same course. Maybe it's 3 of you in an investment club, don't know what it is, but just finding people who are going to hold up their end and they're talented and can help you do what you do better. And I love that concept. And I also had a concept for that concept of what I look at when those things come down. And I hope I'm not taking up too much time, you guys.
No, keep going.
Okay, so the three things I look for anything, whether I'm getting into business, whether I'm investing with somebody, whatever it is, number one, are they competent? I don't care if they're honest, if they're not good. So number one, are they competent? Number two, do I really like them and trust them? Because think about it, we're getting into bed, we're getting into a marriage. I better like you because I'm going to be talking to you a lot. And then number three, are you honest and trustworthy? And if you don't fit any of those three, I don't want to do business with you. So.
Yeah.
But if you do fit those three and you have amazing talents that fit what don't fit with me, let's find a way to play.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow.
Okay. Real quickly, back to this property in Stockton. What did you end up doing with it? Did you flip it? Did you keep it as a rental?
I flipped it. I had my team fix it up. We had some concerns. There were some terrible farm smells we weren't aware of. Yeah,
you didn't have time to do the sniff check before you had that guy sign the contract out of your trunk.
No. Yeah, there were things that with the railroad was pretty close. There were just some disclosure things that I made sure, put on there.
Yeah. So what was the outcome then?
I think I netted $52,000 after paying all the expenses. I sent that deal into your team.
That's awesome.
That's like 100%. I mean, it's more than 100% profit. Well, I guess if you paid cash, it's about 100% profit. That's awesome. What lesson did you learn from this deal?
Just making things happen, being out in the trenches and shaking trees, and just being in a flow state and going with what rolls and just taking that and driving away. Can you imagine driving back to my house an hour and a half later, talking to my team with a signed contract?
Yeah.
Boom! I freaking cut the animal over my back.
There's this thing I see in new investors all the time that I don't see in you, Tim. And that is a lot of new investors are just so timid. And not even new investors, just investors in general. People have been doing it for a decade. They're so timid and afraid to make a decision or to make an offer, to go after something, to have that conversation on the phone. People are so afraid of shooting their shot, like to go out there and get it, like why are you not like that? How can somebody become more like you?
This is a good point. I have a very high risk tolerance, but I went 98-2. Like I bought 100 properties and made money on 98 of them. And so I had really good instincts on when to buy. And I'll bet I had something in that contract. If I found something within 5 days, I could back out.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have big cojones with an out clause.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that's where a lot of, I'll be teaching webinars. I do a webinar every week on BiggerPockets, and I'll be teaching. And I'll say, like I try to make an offer every single week. Every week I make at least one offer. And if I stick to that, usually they, one out of every few ends up getting accepted. And as long as I stick to the lead measure, right? And people will say, yeah, but what happens if you make an offer and then the next week you make another one and both of them get accepted? Oh no, like it's such a tragic thing. And I'm like, okay, first of all, we have out clauses. Second of all, that's not a bad problem. That's a great problem to have.
I know. What if you go on The Price is Right and you win a Ferrari and a Lamborghini, but you can only pick one? Yeah. What are you going to do? No. I can't invest in real estate.
And the
taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The taxes. Yeah. The maintenance. I can't get into it.
Yeah. So anyway, I read recently in the book Traction, they said it's more important that you decide than what you decide. And I really like that quote. You can't take it obviously too far, but like the idea of like, it's more important that you just make decisions in life and be bold and go after it than to just be scared and timid all the time and never take action at all. Because no action.
I like that. But my mom had a line where she'd say, I've just decided. And there were things like, and she was an alcoholic, and there were, like she moved to Santa Barbara on a whim. And so there, I had a lot of sayings in my head thanks to both parents, but I think that like that measure twice, cut once, it's like I'm in, and I'm just scouting for why am I out? And I'd back out of stuff,
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Cool. All right, dude. Well, let's get on to the next segment. That was really good. Deep dive. But now it's time for the
Fire round.
All right, this is the fire round. This is the part of the show where we pull questions direct from the BiggerPockets forums and we fire them at you, Tim, to see if you can give some advice to some real estate investors on our forum. So number one, Charles from Bridgeport, Connecticut said, I'm a young investor getting started. Should I try to buy my own home or should I just stick with renting? And then I've heard a lot about renting where you live and owning where you rent. Like what factors would you look at in making that decision?
There's a lot of different it's hard to say. I don't know his employment, don't know much about him, but something that might work for you is like a group home. I have a lot of young friends that do this, where they buy a home and have like two of their friends as their tenants. Yeah, and that's a good way to start, where you're in charge, and then something you could do off that is have somebody else come manage that home. You buy the next home with two more friends, and that one's taking care of itself.
That is exactly what Tim told me 18 years ago that I should do with the first house that I was going to buy. That's awesome. Before we called it house hacking, it was Tim Rhode's group home strategy.
And look at Uyghur and Diego. There's examples of this model all over the country now. It's amazing.
So, Brandon, if I want to learn more about how to do this, how can I find out?
Wow, David, thanks for asking. So we just launched a book at BiggerPockets, actually, called The House Hacking Strategy, on this very topic, inspired by this whole idea of buying whether it's a house or a duplex, triplex, fourplex. Anyway, it's by Craig Curlop, and you can get it at biggerpockets.com/house hacking or wherever books are sold. I think, at least I know it's going to be eventually at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. But right now I know for sure it's at biggerpockets.com/house hacking or biggerpockets.com/store. With that, question number 2.
From Benjamin. Benjamin says, I am a college student looking to buy a triplex for a rental. I saved about 30 grand, which is enough to buy the property in cash, but it needs an additional 50 to 60K in renovation. Since I'm a student, I don't have regular income. How would you go about financing this rehab?
I would probably look for somebody in my world. Like I think, Brandon, you talked about your parents going in with you. And that might be a good way for them to. I'd also, if I was that person, take a really good look at the deal and make sure the whole thing makes sense. Because a lot of times what you think is a great deal is a good deal, and good deals turn into bad deals really quick. So only do exceptional and great.
Yeah, I was going to say, if somebody came to me, and I'm not saying please don't everyone listen to this come to me, but if somebody came to me and was like, especially that somebody I knew, I had a relationship with, and said, hey, I got 30 grand I want to put down on this property. Would you want to partner with me? I'll do all the work. I'll do everything. I just need some more money for rehab, but I'm putting in 30 grand. I got skin in the game. I would have a very good, serious conversation with that person. And because I'm an experienced investor, I'd be able to look at the deal and say, yeah, you shouldn't do this deal. And if it was good, I'd be able to say, yeah, actually, let's do this thing together. It'll be fun. I don't have to do any work. I just got to put in some money and I'm going to make a good, So yeah, go to somebody who's more experienced. I love that advice, and got some cash. It's perfect.
I was going to say you could always just sell a kidney or something.
That works.
Do the rehab with the money, and then if you make enough, you can just buy another kidney.
Isn't that the Tim Rhode method of like, just put a really long closing on it? Hey, I'm going to find a way to come up with that 50 or 60 grand.
And could you exchange for the kidney?
There you go. You could.
The 1031 kidney exchange.
Like properties. It's like you're going for a liver or nothing.
All right. Question number 3. Hey, all. I'm moving and I want to figure out whether I should sell or rent my house. The property's been appreciating like crazy, but when I see the numbers, I would have negative cash flow every month if I held on to it. So would you ever hang on to a property with negative cash flow just hoping to gain in equity?
It depends on how much the negative is, but if it's appreciating at a faster clip than what the negative is, boy, I always tell people as much and long, if you can hold it, do it. That's my own thoughts. Many would say just sell it, move on, don't have any negative. But I held some properties with negative cash flows in a way appreciating market for a long time, and it turned out a good move. So
yeah,
wasn't yeah.
That's a very good transition into question number 4. So I know, Tim, that you kind of got out of the market in that little period between '05 and '07. So the question is, did you see any warning signs coming? What effect did that downturn have on your investment portfolio, and how did you know it was time to get out?
I'm so glad that we got this question because I track trends because I listed and sold real estate and I had the multiple listing service access from 1990 till 2007. And I knew every time when it went up, when it went down, how many homes are on the market, how many new listings, how many went pending, how many sold, how many expired. We'd do the 10 because I was doing how much work am I doing versus the rest of the board. So from 90 to 97, I didn't buy much. From 97 to 2007, I bought a ton. Excuse me, until about 2006. And from 2005 to 2007, I sold 17 properties with 52 tenants right into our peak. And yes, I saw it coming because I was in the trenches, and it was like a blow off top in the stock market. And the last two flips I had done, I didn't make a profit on, and I could just see the market sputtering. And you know, you might want to get out a little earlier. I kind of slid into home plate very nicely and was really lucky, actually.
That's cool. Yeah. On that note, where do you think we are in the cycle right now?
I think we have some legs to go, believe it or not. I keep hearing there's some people in my world that think it's run its course, and by the end of the year, it's going to hit the fan. I think we're a good 2 to 4 years away. That's just mine.
All right, David, where do you think we are?
I think the same as Tim. I think like you mentioned earlier, Brandon, you don't know why people don't do more subject to financing. I think it's because interest rates just keep getting pushed down. You don't need to take over somebody else's payments because you can get 2% lower on the interest rate if you go do your own thing. And I think that that's fueling, I don't want to say a bubble, but it's giving you strong winds at your back. So if you think about like right now, as interest rates go down, it makes the house you live in worth more because someone else can pay more to buy it and have the same payment because interest rates are low. It also means that once you sell it, you can get a really low interest rate on your next house. The minute that changes, if rates go from 4% to like 6 or 7, now no one can pay as much for your house, so it's worth less when you sell it. And when you go buy a new house, you lose your 3.5% or 4% rate, and you had to go in at 6.5 or whatever. So no one's going to want to move. And I think if that happens, that's when we're going to see the market really slow down. And the only people that are going to be buying and selling are people that kind of have to. They move, they need a bigger house because they're having another kid, traditional reasons, not just these moves that we make right now because they make sense. So as long as interest rates stay low, I don't see anything changing. But that's one of the markers that I'm looking for is when I see rates start inching up, that's when I'm going to expect the market to start to slow down.
All right. Good answer. All right. Well, before we get out of here, that is the end of the fire round. Let's get to the world famous four. All right. This is the last segment of the show where we ask our guests to answer the same 4 questions that we ask every guest to answer. Question number 1, Tim, other than your own, which I'll ask you about in a moment, but other than your own, would you have a favorite real estate related book, something related that for real estate investors?
Yeah. It's an old classic. Fixin' Ugly Homes for Cash by Jay DeSima. You guys ever hear of that?
Yeah, Fixer Jay. I've read a couple of books of his. Yeah, they're good.
It was a great basics how-to, you know.
Yep.
So yeah.
There you go. All right,
cool. What's your favorite business book?
I like the E-Myth because One Life Fully Lived is the E-Myth for life. It's kind of like, you know, the inner core workings. So I love the E-Myth. I think it's an amazing book.
all right.
Okay. I know you're going to love this question. What are some of your hobbies?
Just anything outdoors. And you know, we talked about whether you're alone or with others. It's just there's no sound in life as rare and beautiful as the sound of the adult giggle. And when you're out getting the goods in the woods or whatever it is for you, just enjoying, you know, that to me is fulfillment and what life's all about. So
that's great. And number 4, what do you think sets apart successful real estate investors from all those who give up, they fail, or they just never get started?
I think to discern between I said it before, you can't have a good deal because it could quickly turn into a bad deal. So you got to find only the great deals and the good deals. And the discernment, in that is so important. And that's the reason to hit your numbers and to do a lot of prospecting and wind the heck out of your propeller.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's really good. All right, Tim, this has been an amazing time. Can you tell us where can people find out more about you and your nonprofit?
Yeah, please, first of all, read Tribe of Millionaires. You can see it off to the side here. That's our new book from my buddies at GoBundance. Please check out onelifefullylived.org. It's my baby. It's my life's work. And if you want to support us, join the One Life community on Facebook. It's the number One Life community on Facebook. And also, please come to one of our 6 events in 2020. We're going to have One Life Thrive events all over the country. And please consider joining our contributor club, which is also on our website under support. And that way we can get you coaches in real estate and our 4 areas of teaching of vision planning, relationships, finance, and wellness, and help you crush your life so you can help us throw down the rope. Thank you.
Awesome, dude. All right, well, thank you, Tim. This has been fantastic today. Really, really enjoyed having you, learning more about your story, and just hearing about how you're kind of giving back and helping people who maybe haven't even thought about financial freedom or about living their best life. Because we only have one life, so let's live it right. And I love that you're teaching that. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's been my sincere pleasure, and it was especially fun to be on with Greenie after, knowing him. Let's think about this, half his life now. So that's great.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yep.
All right, thank you guys. I appreciate you having me on. And dream it, plan it, live it. Check us out at onelifefullylived.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. All right, and that was an interview with Mr. Tim Rhode. That was awesome. I see why he made such a big impact on you at an early age, David. Like that was really cool. He gets that financial independence, that financial freedom as somebody who's not just like on the front end of it, but who has gone through the entire journey and he can see it from a 40,000 foot level now, which is super cool to have those guys on the show.
Yeah, he's kind of the Barry Sanders of real estate. He walked in, he completely dominated, and then he just said at 40 years old, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to get out. He did it on, his terms. I love the emphasis he puts on defense. Like if you asked him, he will tell you, I could have made all the money in the world. It wouldn't have mattered. It only mattered that I saved money so that I could invest it.
Yep.
The only metric that really matters is what you have left over to invest after you make all your money.
Yeah. There you go. Very, very cool. Well, before we get out of there, we're going to add one more little segment of the show here, which I think we did once before, but we're going to try to make it a more regular thing. And that is to highlight some of our BiggerPockets Pro members out there doing deals. So today I'm going to give you a quick story about April Childers. I'm hoping I'm saying it Childers, right? From McEwen, Tennessee. Recently did her first deal, a new construction deal. She bought a 2-acre lot, split it into 2, and then built a single family home on one of the lots. Then she sold the second lot off. Purchase price, get this, you guys are going to love this. Purchase price, $65,000. Cash invested, $97,000. Sale price, $243,000. Sold in 4 days. And she also listed it herself because she decided to become a real estate agent. So very cool story. Congratulations, April, on your first deal. And this is a reminder, everybody, get out there, get active on the forums. Every day, BiggerPockets Pro members like April are writing about the deals that they're doing on the BiggerPockets Success Story Forum. So if you are not on the forums, you should definitely be so. And also, if you want to be featured on this segment of the show, do me a favor, write down this. Ready? Write down the email address, podcast@biggerpockets.com. If you are a BiggerPockets Pro member, shoot us an email at podcast@biggerpockets.com with the subject line Pro Deal, PRODEAL, and give us the details. And we are going to feature one every week, a story about one of our members doing an awesome real estate deal. So again, email is podcast@biggerpockets.com and put Pro Deal into the subject line. And that's all I got. So,
sounds
David,
great.
Want to take
get out of here, man. This is David Green for Tim, taking the Tim out of Timid Road, and Brandon Tesla Turner signing off.
Nice.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com. your home for real estate investing online.